art series on AI and how you should feel comfortable and be responsible while using it. Okay, so there's a big discussion obviously out there around AI globally, not just in the UK. There are certain things that you need to know in terms of what is a good and responsible use of AI and the things that are not okay. What is an abuse of AI, so to speak. Now, the reason why I mention this, and this is particularly for the students to understand, we had quite a few academic misconduct cases last year where such cases against students were upheld, which therefore delayed their graduation and the final outcome of their MBA degree. The university has got very strict standards when it comes to use and sort of abuse of AI as appropriate. At the same time, we also had students, MBA students, your colleagues, some of them are still your colleagues, they have not finished their MBA yet. They participated at a national conference in the UK where they used AI to generate some marketing content, which was part of the competition, and they actually won that competition. So that brought glory to Middlesex MBA program overall. So you've got some good examples where people are using AI for the right purpose, in the right way, in a responsible way. At the same time, on the contrary, you've got cases where academic misconduct had to be reported against students. So today is the first of the three AI talk. Please mute yourself. I think someone's microphone is on. So today is the first of the three sessions that you have organized under the title of Responsible and Effective Use of AI in Academic Work. Today's session title is Critical and Ethical Use of AI. Critical and Ethical Use of AI. The next session will be looking at AI tools and support for library research, which is on 19th of November. Then we have AI tools in library resources, which is on 27th November. These sessions are entirely to help and support you understand the use, application, and utilization of AI from also understanding the university's regulations around AI. So without further ado, we've got Dr. Mark Wilkinson, who is our speaker today. He will be leading this particular talk on critical and ethical use of AI. Mark, if it's all right, we could perhaps keep the last 10 minutes for some Q&A, if possible,
Yeah.
before we end the session, and then we can take the conversation further as we keep going.
Wonderful.
Over to you, Mark.
All right. Thank you, Rick. Thanks for having me. And thank you, everyone, for attending. Like Rick said, my name is Mark. I am part of the Academic Skills Advisors team. If you guys were here previously, it used to be the Learning Enhancement team. So it's a little bit of a rebrand, but ostensibly we do quite similar things, which is academic support in terms of language. And that can be anything from essay and report writing through to presentation skills, etc. So I'll say a little bit more about that later if you'd like to book an appointment or get any further support with academic writing. And today I am talking to you guys about the critical and ethical use of AI. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Just bear with me one sec. And I'm also going to try to use two screens, which I don't normally do. So you guys are guinea pigs. Good luck. Good luck to you. Let's see. All right.
You can see your screen, Mark. It's on.
Yes, wonderful. That's great. Excellent. Okay, so critical and ethical use of AI. I think Rick did a really good introduction to this, that this is a field of, well, it's an emerging technology, and it's very important that we consider it an emerging technology because it is changing all of the time. But it's also posing quite a lot of issues around student work and issues of authorship. And as Rick mentioned, questions around academic misconduct. So this is sort of a general overview of questions and criteria factors that you should be thinking about. I will preface all of this by saying that this is not the final word on how to use generative AI or large language models at university. This is going to be determined by your program leaders, by your module leaders. And so it's really, really important that that's a conversation that you're having all of the time. Not all of the time, but consistently, I would say, throughout your time here at Middlesex. So without further ado, we are going to today talk about the following. Basically, understanding what AI can do, and probably more importantly, what it can't do. I think that there is a tendency to sort of assume that it can sort of do everything, that it's a panacea, and that it's going to be able to do all of these wonderful things for us. And it can, but that there is also sort of a cost benefit that you need to sort of keep in mind. And of course, that means that we'll be talking about key ethical issues around AI use, and of course, some practical guidelines for using generative AI responsibly. So we will touch on some of those. Now, before I say much more, you can raise your hands, you can put it in the chat if you want. I know there's quite a lot of people here. Have you used AI? And this does not need to be, there's not a right and a wrong answer, right? We're not trying to sort of catch you out. Have you used AI in any aspect of your life? Whether it's scheduling, finding recipes, have you used it as a search engine? We've got some hands up. Vivek, you
Hi.
have used it. Yeah, what have you used it for?
I have used for visual effects
For what,
for
sorry?
removing in visual effects.
Oh, in visual effects. Ah,
Yeah,
interesting. Cool.
for removing background. Yeah.
Wonderful. That's excellent. Thank you. And what about Ahsan? Ahsan, what have you used it for? You may be talking, but you're not
Azan said to
unmuted.
make video. Okay. Azan left text in the chat, I suppose.
Oh, he put it in the chat. Oh, let
Yeah.
me open up the chat.
He's
Excellent.
multitasking.
And then Vinu, what have you used it for? Or have you put that in the chat as well?
Not yet. George said that he has used it, or he is using for large data analysis. Navnath says
Interesting.
structuring the report format. Okay, got some responses there.
Structuring the report format. Interesting. Good. So we'll talk more about that. Kind of how you can use it to make structures, etc. Good. So people are using it for all sorts of different things, right? And I think that this is a reality that we need to be very conscientious here at the university, which is that in the workplace, in people's personal lives, AI is being used, right? So don't think for a moment that we're telling you that this is beyond the pale, something we don't want you to be using. It is part of our lives now, and it will be moving forward into the future. What do we mean when we talk about AI at the university? I think that oftentimes we throw around this term AI, and of course, it's not really the most specific term. We're effectively talking about generative AI or large language models. So ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Microsoft Copilot, but also there are aspects of this now with Grammarly, Google Translate, Midjourney, etc. But effectively what it's doing, and I think I don't need to say much about this because I'm not an expert in the actual technology, but it's using patterns almost like predictive text, right? Like autocorrect on your phone, but in a much more sort of complex way, and that it has all of this data and it uses patterns and predictive technology to create things like text, images, as well as film. It can do all sorts of wonderful and interesting things, but it's only as good as the data that it is using, right? And so this is a point that we'll be coming back to, which is that the large language models that are available are largely based around data that is coming from the internet. And as we know, the internet is not the most sort of squeaky clean place. There's a lot of disinformation, misinformation, biased information. And so if we are using AI as kind of like approaching it as though it has sort of objective information, I think that this is something that we should probably start to question a little bit in the same way that you would be quite critical or be using your critical thinking skills just when doing a Google search, etc. So, university policies. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of how to use it, the university policies obviously don't submit AI-generated work as your own. It does seem like quite an obvious point to make, but as Rick mentioned, this has been happening quite a lot over the past couple of years. And I understand what it's like to study. You're balancing work, family, other obligations, plus you're trying to get all of your work done. It can be very, very, very tempting to think, you know what? I'm just going to use it for this little bit of my assignment. Be very, very, very careful of that because it is obvious to your lecturers when you have used AI and when you haven't, right? And this is not the kind of you're doing a master's degree, right? It's a lot of money, it's a short amount of time. You don't want to be putting any of that in jeopardy. There are MDX AI guidelines, and I'll show them to you. But like I said, ask your lecturer, right? Essentially, whoever is marking your work, make sure that you're working towards them. The same way in business, you would be building a report, writing a report for a client, or pitching a plan to a potential client or to a boss. Same thing here. You're working towards your lecture, right? So find out what it is that they accept, and then you can work within that those bounds. So this is on the this is on my MDX. Am I allowed to use generative AI? You cannot use it unless specified by the module leader. I'm just sort of paraphrasing what it says here. Most schools will now be moving towards having some kind of cover sheet or space where you declare how you used it, right? This is really, really, really important. A lot of this, and this is about ethics, right? A lot of this is to do with questions around ethics. What's ethical? Transparency, right? So if you use it, that's fine if you're using it according to the university's guidelines or your lecturer's guidelines, but also be sure that you're being transparent about how you're using it. Don't try to pull the wool over anyone's eyes because, like I said, it can be really obvious. And you might be using it for something like somebody had mentioned structuring a report. It may seem like that's, well, I just used it to structure the report. It's still important that you're being transparent about that. Part of that transparency you can find on the library website. I know that you have a session coming up with the librarian, so I won't say too much about it, but you are expected to cite or reference the use of an LLM or generative AI. There's all sorts of different referencing systems. Do you guys use Harvard? You probably use Harvard. Yeah. You can see here that they have referencing guides for each of the systems, Harvard, APA, IEEE, etc. But effectively, it's not much different than what you would do if you were referencing personal communications, right? So let's say you reach out to somebody for advice on a particular project that you're doing via email, and then you reference that or you cite that within a report that you're writing. You would cite that as personal correspondence. Effectively, that's what they're asking you to do with generative AI. It's kind of like having a conversation with somebody and then you're citing that. Some of it depends. I think, again, I'll leave this for the librarian to talk about, but originally they wanted you to include your prompts, right? But if you're using AI effectively and you're having a conversation with it and changing your prompts in response to what it's saying, then that might be too much for a reference list. But again, speak to your lecturer and find out what it is that they want or that they expect. This is from 24-25. I have not been able to find 2025-26, the policy and procedures for academic integrity and misconduct. So I'm assuming that they haven't been updated. But effectively, I would just say that you must read through these and ensure that you understand, because you do not want to end up in a situation like Rick mentioned, where you have used AI, you haven't used it correctly, and it's putting your success here at Middlesex at risk. So, with all of that being said, what can it do and what can it not do, right? This is really, really, really important. According to Microsoft, so this is from Microsoft Copilot, it uses natural language processing and machine learning to interpret your prompts. It can assist with your writing, but but its ability is based on patterns that already exist. And so this is what I was saying already. It's really, really, really important to keep this in mind. It is only as good as the data that is available. So the data that is available on the internet can be biased, right? And that bias can be everything from racist, misogynistic, through to just regionally biased, right? You'll often find, even when you're doing a report, you're doing your own research, so much stuff is published in the US, right? So that's an aspect of bias as well. So you keep that in mind if an AI model is using, sorry, a large language model is using the data that is available, a lot of it is going to be, of course, English language, but it's also going to be from parts of the internet that are more rich with data. That's going to be the global north, etc. It does so less now, but it can hallucinate. So what do we mean by hallucinations? Hallucinations are where it just makes stuff up because it sounds like it might be right. So one thing that we came across a lot in the past couple of years were reference lists, right? So a student had used AI and they said, write this essay. Can you also include some citations and references? And because it's based on patterns, right, the large language model will produce a reference list that looks like a reference list, right? It's got a name, it's got a date, it's got a publication, but that text does not exist, right? And you need to be very, very, very careful about this because we have found it before, there would be a certain amount of you don't have time to look through every single student's entire reference list, especially if you're writing a longer dissertation, right? But going in and checking a couple of times and finding that students just kind of they used this reference, they assumed that it was real because ChatGPT or DeepSeek or whatever said that it was real, but it was just completely made up, right? Making up data, making up stats. Be very, very, very careful of that. Style and vocabulary. Now, I'm going to show you some examples of this. And again, I will say this several times. AI writing, right now, maybe it'll get better in the future, but as of today, AI writing sounds like AI. It sounds like AI. It is so clear to your lecturers that it is generative AI because it's really common, like it's following patterns, so it's speaking in generalities, it's not very specific. And I've had this conversation with so many lecturers. We know your voice, right? And we want your voice. We want you to come through, not just in emails, but also in what you are writing, right? Because the point of university is not that you can read something and then reproduce what it says. The point of university is that you can read broadly, do research, interpret what you've read.
Mark, somehow you're on mute.
Oh,
Yeah, not sure
I
how
don't know.
that's possible, but
There we
okay.
go. I don't know. Well, I'm sure I'll repeat myself again, but basically AI writing sounds like AI writing. So moving on. Another thing, this is just something to keep in mind, the environmental impact of AI is staggering. Obviously, these data processing centers need to be kept cool. There are extraordinary statistics about, asking ChatGPT to like make an image for you is the same as taking like 1,000 showers or something like this, right? So obviously, somebody's microphone is on. If you have a question, just let me know. But this is just something to keep in mind. Obviously, most of the environmental impact is coming from Europe, the United States, but this is, of course, spanning out to the rest of the world. Again, it's going to be used. This is the same of the internet broadly, just living in sort of the digital world that we live in. But I would say when you're using it as a search engine, for instance, you can still use Google or what have you, as opposed to using AI just to ask for, what is the capital of X country, etc. Okay, what can it do well? It can generate ideas and it can brainstorm. It can help you with that, but within reason. So sort of keeping in mind all of that stuff that we said already about bias and hallucinations. But it happens to all of us. You're writing, you're coming up with ideas for a report or a pitch or something like this. And writer's block, it happens. You think, oh my days, I don't actually know what to say about this particular thing, or you've looked on Google, you haven't found it. It can be really, really useful in the sense that you're almost using it like a critical friend, right? You might be bouncing ideas off of it in the same way that you would bounce ideas off of a lecture or somebody else that you're studying with, but within reason. Summarizing information, again, really useful. I would say, though, to be careful of this, we have had lots of students using AI to summarize articles, right? Journal articles. The problem is with that is that while it may produce an accurate summary, you haven't read the article, right? So there is a question there about whether or not, if you're just using the summary and then saying, well, that must be what the article said, and then using that to support your argument in a report or what have you, that's going into the area of academic misconduct because you're citing something, you're referencing something that you yourself didn't read. So this can be really useful if you're reading through an article. And we all know journal articles can be very opaque, very difficult to understand. They're not written for students, right? They're written for other experts in the field. So like my background is in linguistics. I can read a linguistics article and pretty much understand it. But if I go to read an article on finance, right, it will be completely inaccessible to me. What I would suggest you do in that case, if you're reading something you don't understand it, try to understand. Try to summarize sections. Obviously, don't read the article like you would a novel. Read the introduction, read the conclusion, the discussion, see if you can make heads or tails of what it's saying. And then compare your summary against the AI summary. And again, that's kind of using it as a tool. That's using it as a critical friend to bounce ideas off of. But you're not outsourcing the reading of the article to it. So I'll say more about that in a moment. Obviously, it can help you to correct grammar and style. However, massive caveat here. I mean, this is London, it's Middlesex, is an international university. I'm sure a lot of us speak other languages as English is an additional language for us, right? So it's going to be the case that you think, okay, I'm concerned about my grammar. I will tell you one sort of cautionary tale of a student, brilliant student, really, really good, really, really hardworking. And they were writing an essay. This was for an undergraduate degree. They were writing an essay for me for a module that I was teaching. And at the very last hurdle, like right before they submitted the essay, they put it into Copilot, ChatGPT, something. And they said, can you fix the grammar? When they submitted the essay, immediately, because it was being double marked, not just by me, but by somebody else, the double marker was like, this is AI, like fail, they fail. Now, luckily, because I had been working with this student for weeks, right? Let's say the first 6 weeks of the semester, I knew that they had written that essay because I had seen drafts and I had seen them doing the research. And because I had a relationship with that student, I was able to say to the second marker, no, 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 they 100% wrote the essay, but something happened. And when I sat down with that student, they were like, I know, because English was an additional language for them. They said, I know my English wasn't perfect, that there were grammatical mistakes. So I put it into AI. But what AI will often do is that it will change the wording, it will change the grammar to such an extent that it no longer sounds like you, and it no longer sounds like like a student wrote it, like a person wrote it. So you need to be very, very careful. So I say use that. Yes, it can help with grammar, but instead of just saying, can you fix the grammar for me? Say, what are the grammatical errors that I have made? Um, and then if you still don't understand how to correct them yourself, then you can say, how would I go about doing that? But it's really, really, really incumbent. I would say it's incumbent upon you that you put in some of that effort, right? To not just outsource, correct my grammar, but to figure out what the grammatical mistakes are using AI in a conversation. Providing practice questions and examples, it's really good at that. It is not a reliable source. It can hallucinate facts. It can be biased. It lacks critical judgment. So we've already said most of this, that there are quite a lot of limitations to AI. So when it comes to using it as a source, using it as a over relying on it, outsourcing too much of your understanding of the subject to it is dangerous because of all of these reasons. So why does critical use matter? AI outputs sound convincing even when they're wrong, right? So I will show you an example of student writing that if you read it, you might think, yeah, sounds okay. Sounds pretty good to me. Um, but that being said, it is, like I said before, it's speaking in generalities, and it is ostensibly nonsense, right? Just like a bunch of words that sound sort of vaguely academic. But as we've written here, fluent nonsense, it's still nonsense, right? You still need to be making sure that you're double checking information um, against what you have written, right? Not over relying on it. Like I said before, if you're using it to summarize an article, also put in the legwork and read the article yourself. But you're using it as a tool. You're not depending on it, using it as a crutch or outsourcing too much of the sort of cognitive effort to it. And why? Because AI generated writing sounds like AI generated writing. Rick and I have both been teaching for years, right? So we have read student writing before AI and student writing after AI. And there is a very, very strong difference, right? So I'm going to show you an example. I'll give you guys a minute or two to read through this. This is an example of an introduction. It's on a general topic. It's about climate change. So I'm going to give you guys a minute to read through that and think about what are its strengths? What about it actually sounds like it could be written by a student? But also, can you pick up on any weaknesses? Are there anything, is there anything in here that you think, ooh, like that definitely would raise some red flags to me? So I'll give you a minute. Okay. All right. So there are some major red flags here. What are they? Did you guys find anything in here that made you think, that sounds a little bit fishy? Phrases like delve into. Thank you, Soidan. Why, why do you think that it sounds that delve into sounds like AI?
Well, I think I should remain neutral because I'm an academic integrity tutor. I don't want to give too much clues about students, but that sounds a bit unrealistic, so to say. We don't use that term, that phrase, quite often in daily, daily speaking.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's absolutely right. So it's the vocabulary seems a little bit off. Phrases like delve into. What else have you guys noticed? You can put it in the chat. You can just raise your hand. I'll give you a minute. That's a singular focus on the UK. Yeah. Oh yeah, that was Rick. Yeah, thanks, Rick. Yeah. So there are a bunch of things here that stick out. Number one, the vocabulary, right? This essay will delve into is a very odd turn of phrase. It's very unusual. It's not wrong necessarily, but it sounds strange. It doesn't sound like the kind of language that we would expect, and it also doesn't sound like the kind of language that a student would use. Phrases like the path is strewn with practical obstacles. Again, it sounds like AI. It's this very kind of a lot of this stuff is developed elsewhere. Um, Oh, I just realized my computer might die. Bear with me one sec. A lot of this stuff is developed. There's like content moderators, right? So there's different sort of grades or shades rather of English use around the world, and we're looking at some issues around that, right? The tone. Now I'm so sorry. This is so unprofessional of me. I have to run and grab my charger. I'm so sorry. Bear with me 1 second. I'll be right back. I left it in the other room.
No problem, Mark. Take your time.
Rule number one of presentations is always ensure that you have your
Okay, understandably, let's give Mark a couple of minutes to join back. I'm pretty sure his laptop just died, which tends to happen.
Hello again. Sorry.
Hi,
I was
Mark.
literally,
Welcome back.
thank you. I was literally saying, I was like, when we tell students, when we teach presentation skills, we're like, number one rule is if you're doing it online, make sure that you have your charger with you. And I
Don't
broke the number one rule. Rules are meant to be broken, guys. Remember that. Okay, let me get back to the talk. So we were talking about that particular paragraph. Um, and all of the ways that it sounds, it does not sound like it is it certainly doesn't sound like student writing. It also doesn't really sound like anybody's writing. And that is because of the vocabulary that it's using and the tone. That was the last thing that I was saying. It says things like, despite the UK's proactive stance, which showcases its commitment to climate leadership, that is not written like an essay. That is written like a press release on behalf of the UK government. It's very, I mean, it's biased. It's also, it's untrue, right? The UK government isn't sort of a leader in this area, but it's written in such a way that is really, really problematic. It uses vague or general language, right? So in the section where it's talking about what the essay is going to do, sort of the outline, it says, we will explore the UK's climate policies in detail and suggest ways to bolster their implementation. This is very vague, very vague. You know, if you're writing a report, if you're writing an essay, you need to be really specific. You wouldn't say, we will explore the UK's climate policies. You would say which climate policies you're looking at, etc. Okay, so what I have seen students do quite a lot is say, all right, fine, it doesn't sound particularly academic. Can you, ChatGPT, make it sound academic? So this is what I did with this particular introduction. And what it came up with was more sort of complex writing without actually being academic. Now, I would say that academic writing while it does use very specific vocabulary, discipline-specific vocabulary, which may, if you're not in the field, sound like jargon, is still it's understandable, it's accessible. You're not writing in such a way that it's opaque and you can't understand it. Usually grammar, the way we expect academics to write is very straightforward, very, very clear. What it has done here is made it sound just more complicated. It just added longer words. So can you make this more academic? It said, sure. Then it said, central to this endeavor are national strategies and policies meticulously designed to mitigate the pervasive impacts of this crisis. The United Kingdom has emerged as a vanguard in this domain. Again, this is not just vocabulary. This is also about sort of tone. So it hasn't actually made it sound more academic. It has made it sound more like AI, actually. You'll also notice one small thing. Obviously, I'm not English. You can tell from my accent. I grew up in Canada, where we do use British spelling. One thing with ChatGPT and all of these large language models is that they use American spelling, which may or may not be a problem. Some lecturers care, some lecturers don't care, but it's often one of the #1 things that I notice. If you know, in the second line, it says central to this endeavor, spelled O-L-R as opposed to O-U-R. It's a small thing, but it may be, that's sometimes a red flag that lecturers might notice. So, as I said, the vocabulary, the tone, but also it's really general. So I went back into ChatGPT and I said, can you make it sound more specific? And it rewrote it. Is it more specific? No. It can't really do that. You can give it the information. You can say, can you add this point, this point, this point? But when I told it to just make it more specific, or rather asked it to make it more specific, what it did was it said, this essay will delve into the UK's actions against climate change with a special focus on. We will explore the UK's climate policies in detail. So it never actually told us which specific policies. It didn't give us the actual focus. It just used language that makes it sound like it's more specific. So it's very, very difficult to get generative AI to not sound like generative AI. And so again, just saying one last time about that student that almost failed because he used it to correct his grammar. What it did was it made it sound like this. It made it sound like AI nonsense. And they almost failed. Luckily, they didn't because I had been working with them. But if you're submitting, I mean, this is a really large cohort of students. There's 117 people right now. If your lecturers are going through loads and loads and loads of reports and essays and they come across something that sounds like it might be AI, chances are they haven't been working with you really, really closely and they might not know. So you need to be very, very conscientious of the extent to which you're using it to fix your language. In terms of ethics, sort of these ethical dimensions, we've said this already. I mean, be transparent. Let us know if you're using it, how you're using it. Be really cognizant of bias, prejudice. Like I said, really, like there can be sort of more subtle bias, regional bias. There can also be more outright bias, racism, misogyny, transphobia, etc. There are serious issues around data privacy. We were told at one point, this has since been rescinded, but we were told at one point that if you're using Microsoft Copilot and you've signed in, that it keeps the data private that you're inputting into it, into the chat, and that it's not scraping that data to be used in the model. But there's no evidence to back that up. So you don't want to be putting in anything too personal. And if you, for instance, if you're working with clients or external stakeholders, then you need to be really, really careful about the kind of information that you're putting into an AI. And of course, plagiarism. So I am going to hand over to you guys for a second. I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios, and I want you to tell me if you think that it is acceptable or unacceptable. Some of them are very obvious. Some of them are a little bit more nuanced, let's say, or sort of sit in a gray area. So scenario 1, a student uses ChatGPT to write their report or their essay introduction. They edit it slightly and they submit it. Is this acceptable? Yes or no? You can just drop that in the chat. No. No. Not. Very good. Yes, most people are saying no. Absolutely not. No. It totally breaches academic integrity rules. Using AI to support your learning is fine. Submitting its work as your own is not. In this case, sure, you edited it slightly, you submitted it as your own, but you submitted it as your own, and that's a problem. A student drafts parts of an essay. Scenario 2. A student drafts part of an essay, then asks ChatGPT to expand sections to improve arguments, merging them into the final submission. So this is a little bit more of a gray area. So you've drafted parts of it, but then you've asked ChatGPT to expand on sections to improve it. Is it acceptable? Yes or no? I mean, I would say it is a gray area because you have done some of it, but Harman says no, Parth says no. I agree. Tanuja says no. Hassan, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, agreed. It you have done some of it, and this is very, very tempting, right? You've written part of an essay, you have 25 other essays that you need to write. You're busy with work, you're busy with family, you've got all this stuff going on. You're like, I don't have time to write this. What are some other arguments that I could add to this? Still not acceptable because what you were doing is you're not actually using it to brainstorm. You're not saying, what if I missed? And kind of using it as a tool that you're speaking to. You're just getting it to write it for you. You can't have any LLM, ChatGPT, DeepSeek, any of them write parts for you, right? That is key. If it's just writing it for you and then you're submitting it, that's not your writing, right? You can use it to support your writing. So helping you to come up with some extra ideas, sure, but not actually doing the work. A student uploads entire journal articles or sections to ChatGPT and asks it for summaries. Then you integrate these summaries into the essay. Is this acceptable? Again, this is a gray area. I actually already talked about this, but what do you guys think? We've got no, no. You guys are harsh. No. All across the board. It is ambiguous. So,
Well, just a quick comment here. I note the same students are repeating their responses. I would encourage the rest of the class to engage as well. I see the same names engaging, which is great, but we need more engagement.
yeah, get in there, guys. Just a simple yes or no in the chat is always useful. It lets us know that you're there. So this is ambiguous because this is the example I gave earlier. Journal articles can be very, very difficult to understand, especially if it's in a new area. Yes, we can summarize, but not use directly to the essay. Yeah. So you cannot integrate the summaries, right? If you get it to summarize and then you integrate that into the essay, certainly don't copy and paste. But even if you're integrating the summary, you didn't do the summary. I think that there's a lot to be said for rather, as in it's a benefit to use the tool, right? ChatGPT, whatever it is, to help you understand something by challenging you, right? So you summarize the article, then it summarizes the article, and then you look at the difference between those two summaries, right? Or you write a summary and then you put it into the AI tool and say, do you think that this is like an accurate summary? And it might challenge you, or it might say, this is another problem, is that ChatGPT normally says, yes, that's brilliant, wonderful. So be very, very, very careful with how you use it, to what extent you use it, but certainly not just taking the summaries and integrating them. Do you get the overall idea for the comparison? Yeah, absolutely. I think it can be really useful, but not not to over rely on it. And a student asked ChatGPT to explain a difficult concept from a lecture. Explain supply and demand elasticity in simpler terms. Is this acceptable? What do you guys think? Yes or no? So you're just getting it to explain a concept. Yeah. Navnat says yes. Tanuja says yes. Uti says yes. Mohammed says yes. Ramitesh, yeah, yeah. Everybody agrees. Yeah, that's fine. It supports your learning. It doesn't, it's not like you're outsourcing all of it. You've tried, but also I would say, you know what? Try to figure it out on your own. Do a Google search first. Read the literature. You guys have excellent reading lists that have been provided by your program leaders and module leaders, etc. So try to figure it out on your own. But it's the same thing, if I'm watching television and there's like an historical drama and some characters on there and I just do a quick search, like who is that person or what year did this happen? I think stuff like that's fine. But part says, but it should be done just for understanding. Yeah, exactly. Good. Okay, almost done, and then I will stop talking. One major issue to think about is, of course, bias, fairness. A really good example of this is through images. So if you ask ChatGPT, in this case, to generate an image of a doctor or of a CEO of a successful business, chances are you're going to get a white middle-class man, right? Now, what's interesting here was that when I was making these slides or building this deck, I said, can you produce a stereotypical image of a doctor or a CEO or what have you? And do you know what it says? It says, no, I cannot generate stereotypes because that is unethical. It leads to the reinforcement of structural inequalities, blah, blah, blah. It gives you a really good answer. So I was like, okay, all right, fine. We'll just generate an image of a doctor then. And so even though it says that it won't do that, it is only as good as the data, right? And the data that it has generates a doctor that looks like this guy and a CEO who looks like this guy, who to be fair, actually looks like the same guy. Just one is wearing glasses. Also, he looks like the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who used to be the head of the Bank of England. Anyway, even if you ask it to not be biased, to not show prejudice, it does it anyway. It cannot circumvent that because it's using the data, right? Obviously, the question, what types of biases do these images perpetuate? It reinforces the sort of stereotypes that successful doctors and business people are always going to be white guys, cis, het, white, middle-aged, non-disabled, yada, yada. Why is this a problem? I mean, there's lots that you could say about this. But I think that there's lots that you could say about it, a problem for society, but also a problem for your writing, for your work here at the university, is that your lecturers are looking for you to be critical and analytical and really, really, really get into like the weeds in terms of understanding a topic or a strategy or whatever it is that you're doing. And if you're just taking whatever AI is giving you and not interrogating that, then you're going to end up with sort of the report equivalent of the white middle class business CEO, right? So keep this in mind. Also never put in full assignments, personal details, or sensitive research data. Basically, there's 3 C's the entire time. If you get any kind of information from AI, check, credit, and critique. Check to make sure that it's not just hallucinating and making things up. If you're using it, make sure that you credit the use, right? So you say, I used DeepSeek for X. And critique. Definitely don't just, same thing that you do with the journal article. Just because it's published doesn't mean that it's like holy writ. You're still expected to question it and to engage with the ideas. It's the same thing with AI. So things that you can do, brainstorm ideas, proofread your own draft, careful with that. Use it as a tool. Don't just say, fix my grammar. Ask it, what are the common grammatical errors that I'm making? How can I improve these, etc. Don't let it draft anything for you. don't give you exam answers. I don't think you guys are going to be doing an exam. But one of the main things, if you leave with one sort of main tip, if it feels like cheating, then it probably is cheating. This is number one, right? If it feels like that was just a little bit too easy, it probably was too easy. You probably didn't push yourself hard enough. So to end off today's talk, AI is powerful. It can do lots of great stuff. It is limited. It cannot do everything. You need to make sure that you protect your integrity and your future, because that is based on what you are accomplishing here at university, by engaging with these tools ethically. Apply those 3 C's: check, credit, and critique. It should be your assistant, not your replacement. And at the end of the day, if you have any questions about the extent to which you can use AI, don't just guess. Ask your module leaders, ask your program directors, figure out what the specifics are for your particular assignment and for your particular module. You don't want to just assume, because that could, in the end, lead to some issues. So I will stop sharing now, and we'll open it up to questions. Sorry, I went a little bit over the 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was an absolutely brilliant session. Excellent examples. I would say a prudent combination of micro and macro view and overview of AI and its use in academic work. And there were plenty of takeaways. It was very sort of intelligent ending as well, because the takeaways are very clear. But we had a speaker from KPMG yesterday for the MBA students, and one of the things that he said was, one of the many takeaways was, at the interviews, the expectation is you're going to bring yourself, your authentic self. But I think there can be severe long-term implications of losing authenticity and yourself during conversations, in daily conversations, which will have a very high personal cost. Because at the moment, yes, it's academic work. Should I use AI for, searching citations or sort of digging up work of relevant authors? But professionals will have conversations. They will negotiate. They will need to develop sales skills, conflict management, leading intercultural teams. And these are the conversations where AI will not be there as a crutch, as a crutch, as a parachute, or to change your gear. So it's really important to keep that authentic self intact, whether it's in writing or during conversations. I think the examples are fantastic. It was really good pointers. Let's open up the floor for some questions. Would anybody like to ask a question to Mark? Some comments, thoughts, reflections?
Yeah, just any thoughts that you guys have.
Yeah. Please leave it in the chat, or simply, the best thing would be to unmute yourself and speak. We are here to support you. That was such an useful session.
I mean, while some people are typing, I'll just, another anecdote. My partner works as a customer success manager for Zendesk, which is a online ticketing tool, something. And when AI first came out, they were like, use AI as much as you can. It's going to streamline everything, make things faster. They're actually pulling back from that now for exactly the same reason that this person from KPMG said, which was that when you're working with clients, customers, they're spending millions on your product, or however, even if they're not spending millions on your product, they want the human touch. They want to speak to a person. And when they were using AIs to draft emails or to reach out to clients just stopped responding because they were like, well, it's just a bot, right? This isn't actually, and so if we're paying for a service, we want a real human. The joke is that now they have AI bots for like customer support. That's like what you're paying for, like the little chat bots. But the joke is that now you have to pay more to have a person. So if you want to have a real person, like the entry level is just AI. Now, if you want a real person, you have to pay more money. So I think that there's the business, not just business, most fields are not moving away from AI, but becoming much more skeptical of using it for everything. So think about that in your professional lives.
So calibrating our value as humans as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Interactions with humans should be worth more. not
Yeah.
necessarily cost more, but it's valued more. Let's just say it's a question of value than the price, I suppose. Anybody would like to ask any questions tomorrow? Please go ahead, because you're living this age, you're living this technology, and your courseworks are due in 4 weeks' time, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Oh, wow.
anybody's
Coming
got any question? I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but perhaps I can. Parth, George, Ratan, Tirth.
Hi, this is Parth here.
Hi,
Hi,
Parth.
Parth.
Go ahead, please.
So, I wanted to ask, like, um, can we use the AI tools just to get the idea and then start like generating new sort of things, like which are not actually in the topic, but we can get from the topic.
I think that's a legitimate use. Yeah. Right. If you're struggling to, let's say that you have to come up with you're doing something, I'm trying to think of an example from business, like a SWOT analysis, right? And you're thinking you have a bunch of ideas, but you know you need to say more about it. I think it's okay, to say like if we all come up against that writer's block, or you come up to a limit of your knowledge. I think originally it would have meant that you have to read a lot more and you have to go out and speak to people or search in other ways. It's a quicker way of doing so, and I think that that's fine as long as you're then transparent about having done that. Right? Where did those ideas come from? Oh, well, they came from me, and I got some ideas from AI, and certainly not to write anything for you. I think that's sort of the key for me.
uh,
Good
as an
question.
example of like if you take an example aviation company, okay, like it's like a Boeing company. There are a lot of things getting disclosed, and it's still not verified, and then a lot of uh, even writers and the new researchers are going into the uh, trying out to resolve the problem, but then it's not getting solved. Like as a human brain doesn't think as same as everyone thinks, right?
Hmm.
So, like what as Albert Einstein said, you can't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. Like that's what it is. Like every brain thinks in a different way. So, like as an AI it gets collaborative ideas. Like it collect information and then it gives a it's in a general understanding. Like it's not acceptable. And if we go and a search for something like do Boeing 737 Max has the same problem as with all the aircraft. It says no, but then it actually yes. And a lot of researchers are working on it. So
Mm.
we are not totally accepting the AI, and we can't do it actually.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that I mean, there was a lot in that, but I guess I would say ultimately that depending, like in that specific example, right, where you're talking about a
Yeah,
company like
I'm
Boeing.
talking about general thing, but I'm just like myself as an aviation enthusiast. I'm into a creative thinking of the aviation technology. I'm
Yes.
into it. So I found this as a major problem with the AI things.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I think this is the point, is that it's always going to be a tool, and it's something that you can use in the same way. I mean, with every new technology, right? I mean, I started my undergrad, it was 2000. So like we weren't even really using the internet that extensively at that time. When the internet came along, people panicked. Oh my God, students aren't going to read anymore. When Google came along, they were like, oh, people are lazy. They don't even know how to search things. There's always going to be that. But as long as you're, thinking very, very critically about what you are getting from it, right? And using it as one tool out of many. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good point.
Thank you,
All
sir.
right. Thank you. Well, thanks for having me.
You also made some really good points there, Mark, earlier, because, people do use it for, it's a bit lazy and dry to say check my grammar, which is fine to do, but this is an intelligent entity. So if you do have some content, I mean, students, if you do have a paragraph that you've written yourself, and then ask AI, does my content read critical enough? Pick its brains rather than could you make it critical enough for me? There's a big difference. I think you said that with very good examples. Take a step back and think about the prompts. Prompts are that's the key really when it comes to AI. It is not a search engine, so that's it. Probably takes some time to sink, in the society that this is not another Google that we are
Yeah.
experiencing. But yeah, anything you'd like
Yeah,
to say before we? Yeah, sorry.
I
Go on.
was just going to say there's some really good I mean, actually, ChatGPT is good and DeepSeek are good at teaching you how to make effective prompts. Like it's quite useful that way. But there's some really, really good guidelines out there for effective prompts, so that it's not just doing the work for you. It becomes a conversation that you're having. But yeah, I think that I will say, guys, if you have any questions or you want to have one of the academic skills advisors look at your work if you're writing a report and you're concerned about something like grammar or structure, et cetera, et cetera. We can't help with content, but we can help with that. So you can book one-to-one appointments via my MDX. So I hope to see some of you there. If
Very
not,
helpful,
nice to
Mark.
meet you.
Thank you so much once again for your
Thank you.
time, for sharing your expertise, and also answering some of the questions in the end. So we shall
Wonderful.
continue this conversation going forward, but we are off to a fantastic start today. So once again, thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody who joined this particular session, and all the best with your classes, rest of the lessons for the week, and I'll see you at the next event. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye
Thanks,
for now.
everyone. Take care.
Off the glass.